Holy guacamole, you guys. Today is 9 years since I published my very first book, Beautiful Demons, and I am going to just take this moment today to really celebrate that and to talk to you guys about some of the lessons that I've learned and kind of give you a little bit of a pep talk if you're a writer who is thinking about self-publishing and you're doubting at all whether you can make a success out of this, because I really want to let you know that making that decision to self-publish 9 years ago was one of the greatest things I ever did in my life. So I hope you'll stick around and listen to some of my, I don't know if I want to call it wisdom. I'll call it hard-earned wisdom because I've made a lot of mistakes along the way and taken wrong paths, so that hopefully I can share that with you and you can follow a better path. But how exciting, 9 years. Next year, I'm totally gonna do some kind of big blowout because 1 decade since self-publishing. So I'm excited for that. But let's talk about 9 years indie publishing and what that has meant to me. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about in this video, I was really thinking about you guys, because I could have made this a video about here's how many books I've sold and here's how much money I've made, which that might be really interesting to a lot of people as well. So if you're interested in seeing some of those more like number videos, let me know. But this is an emotional day for me. It's an exciting day for me. And I know that there are a lot of writers out there that are hoping to someday have, you know, the experience of being able to say, I self-published 9 years ago and I'm supporting my family with my income. So I want to give you some tips and some encouragement about how I did that and what has really meant the most to me. So whether you've been watching me for a while or you're brand new to Heart Breathings, let me tell you a little bit about myself so that you understand where I'm coming from. I have big goals. I want to be that author who, you know, has the lines around the block and hits the lists and has a movie deal out of her stuff and has fans dressing up in cosplay and all that stuff. Like, I want to be that author and I want to be super successful. However, I also know that there are certain things that I'm not willing to do to find that level of success. Because in my opinion, when you start to game the system, or you're just not being true or writing the things that you really are passionate about writing, either that level of success is never going to come to you, or it's going to be fake and hollow when it does come to you because you didn't really earn it. You're not really connected to your stories. And I never want to be somebody who sounds super judgmental, but at the same time, I feel like there are a lot of people in the indie space who will talk about how fast you need to write, about how you don't need to be writing what you love, you should be writing to this trend. And they basically tell you to kill your joy in writing and pump out a bunch of widgets as fast as you can. I even hear people these days saying things like quality doesn't matter, just get it out as fast as you can. There are even people teaching courses out there that on the sales page, it says stuff like it's not worth the time to write your own books and you should buy them from other people. And the state of that part of the industry, which doesn't even feel like it's part of my industry because it's so far off from what I value as a writer. I mean, that part of the industry to me is toxic and it's harmful to younger authors or to newer authors who are wanting to get their start, because it can be so confusing when you want success really badly and it's not coming to you as quickly as you wanted. It can be really tempting to listen to people that will say, here's how you cut a bunch of corners and get there faster. But really what I want to share with you today is why it's so important to listen to your own heart and trust your own instincts. It may not get you to, you know, making 6 figures as fast as if you had potentially bought books from a ghostwriter, but if you are watching this today because you have stories inside of you that you desperately want to tell, then you would be doing yourself a disservice to let someone else write those books, because it's the experience of writing. If you want to be a writer and a well-known author, write your own books. And it just is one of those things that you can't talk about without sounding judgmental. So I just want you to know that my heart is in the right place, because what I really want to do is protect authors like you from falling into those traps where you feel like I have no choice but to write this genre that I don't love, or I have no choice but to focus mostly on marketing and not worry about my books, or I have no choice but to go faster than I want to go. And all of this stuff is part of the challenge of indie publishing. When I started way back in the old days of 2010, it was a lot different. It wasn't easier because there were no resources. None of us really knew what we were doing. We were kind of all out there on our own. There were no BookBub ads. There were no Facebook ads. That stuff didn't exist back then. So we had to figure out how to find readers on our own without those types of platforms. And it was, it was difficult. It wasn't easy at all. But at the same time, there weren't as many people in our ears telling us how to do it. You got to do this. You got to do this. There also weren't as many people out on Facebook and social media and YouTube telling us how much money they're making. So that comparison wasn't really there. It was more like a wild frontier, of, wow, this is kind of interesting and I don't know if I can make money doing this, but I want to try. So it was very different, and I will acknowledge that. But at the same time, it wasn't easy because there was no roadmap. And the problem now is that there are plenty of people willing to give you a roadmap. But what you have to understand is that there is no one size fits all. There is no one answer. There is no specific, this is the way that you self-publish and this is how you get to $1 million. And some people will try to sell that to you. They'll say, this is how you have to do it. You have no choice. If you want to be successful, you have to go into Kindle Unlimited. You have to write 12 books a year. You have to write this specific genre because I hear people all the time say, I don't write YA because YA doesn't sell, or no one can sell books in YA. And here I am sitting right here as a young adult author for the past 9 years who has made 6 figures a year for many, many years. And it's just one of those lies that people tell, either because they don't have experience enough, or because they tried and failed, or because they just heard it from someone else. Someone else told them why it doesn't sell, so then they didn't write it, and then they tell somebody else. But it's not always true. So first thing I want to tell you guys is there really is no one set right way to self-publish. You don't have to be all over social media. I have friends who are successful as authors who are almost completely non-existent on social media. They have a website that has the list of their books. Maybe they have a Facebook page that they post cover art and, the occasional release date announcement type thing, but they're not connected to their fans on any type of social media. And yet they make 6 to 7 figures a year. I have one specific friend who makes 7 figures a year and he's almost does no social media at all. So when people say, well, the only way to self-publish and be successful is you got to have Twitter and Instagram and you got to have this many followers on Facebook and you have to have a group and you've got to be on Wattpad and, whatever. It's that's just a lie. That's just something maybe they've been told. Those things can enhance your career if you show up well there. So if you really enjoy Instagram and you're great at taking photos, then go to Instagram and make that your platform, and it can absolutely enhance your career. But it is not a prerequisite for you, especially if you aren't very good at taking photos. You're probably not going to build a huge following on Instagram. So think about where you show up best, what you want your career to look like, and then make your career feel and look exactly like you want it to. Because I'm telling you right now from experience of not only what I've experienced in my life, but from what I've watched other people go through and do. And, there's people when someone says, oh, you can't do this, I sit and watch people do it. You can't make money writing YA. And then me and several of my friends all make money writing YA. And it's not like we're traditionally published or have some other big marketing budget. I spend less than $200 a month on marketing and I still sell books. So there are a lot of things that go around that just simply aren't true. And I'm not sure where they originate or why people continue to spread them, but you do hear a lot of people say you have to be active and big on all social media platforms, but you really don't. You could just choose one that you particularly love to engage in, or you could choose none of them. Or you could just have a really big blog, or you could try and show up on all of them if you really enjoy it. It's really up to you because there's no one way. I hear a lot of people these days saying that you have to spend thousands of dollars on ads every month just to make it in indie publishing. And that's not true either, because I have lots of friends, again, myself included, who don't spend more than a couple $100s a month on advertising. And of course, when I first started, I spent $0 on advertising and I only spent $50 on my cover, and I at the beginning, didn't use a professional editor. I had friends and critique partners who were editing my book. Now, I did since go back and hire editors to re-edit those books because you need to put your best foot forward. But sometimes, people will say you have to spend all this money to get your book off the ground, and it's not necessarily true. So that's really one of the first things I want to tell you, because I've learned it, but I also have seen it through experience, is that there really isn't a one-size-fits-all path to success. It's up to you to decide what you want success to look like. I talk about this in both of my courses, in my planner, all over this YouTube channel, because it is so much the fundamental thing of enjoying this career and having, building the life that you want, creating the life and career that you want. You have to know as an individual what you want. What does your ideal life look like? And then have faith in the fact that you can create that life, that you can make your life look like that. What happens when we start to let fear come in, when we start to doubt ourselves, or we start to think, oh my gosh, I can't do this, it's too scary, whatever, when we let fear guide us and be the number one thing that's, leading our choices or determining our choices, we start looking outside of ourselves. We start looking at what everybody else is doing, and then we start making choices that might not really be true to who we are because we're scared. This is something I have done, and I've talked about this before in other videos. I talk about this in my self-publishing course because I'm not afraid to talk about the things that I've done wrong, because it might help you decide differently for yourself. But I had a book called The Trouble with Goodbye, and this was very different from the things I had been writing before. It's a contemporary romance, new adult, and this was a super important book to me because it was a mirror of something that had happened in my own life. And it was very emotional. It was not a sexy romance. It was only from the female point of view. It was a more emotional type book, almost more like women's fiction, but it was a romance. That book, I had a lot of friends telling me, this is going to hit, the USA Today. This is really good timing. It's really trendy, and I got excited because I thought, wow, did I write something on the cusp of a trend that might take off really big? So I put the book out and it did very well, but it was still disappointing because I didn't hit the USA Today. I actually came very, very close because I had a friend who sold I think about 300 books more than I did that week, and she hit the list and I did not. So I was super, super close, probably the closest I've ever come in my career to hitting the USA Today bestseller list. And I was disappointed. And I had a lot of people in a Facebook group that I belonged to that were telling me, you've got to write this sexier. If that first book had been sexy instead of so emotional, you would have hit the list. You got to, really put that heat into it and make it bad boys and, really follow this trend. And so I took the second book and I added things into it that were not true to my writing style or to the tone of that first book. And I, sort of compromised who I was as a writer, trying to get more sales. And it's the first and only time that I've ever done that. And when that book came out, it did extremely well, just like the first one. But what happened was I had a lot of people who didn't like it because when they bought book 2, they were looking for something similar in experience and tone to what they loved about book 1. And I didn't give them that at the beginning of that book. I gave them a book that wasn't truly a Sarah Cannon style book. And a lot of people were disappointed and they gave up on the series. So even though they bought book 2, hoping for that next good experience, they didn't buy book 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And so I had a series that went really, really well at books 1 and 2 and then nosedived from 3 through 6. And I could never recover that. And I have not gone back to rewrite that book because it serves as a lesson to me of what happens when I don't follow my own instincts. If I had just trusted my own instincts, stayed true to myself instead of listening to all these people who were saying, you've got to follow the trends, you've got to do, these other things that are going to make it more successful. And my own fear, if I had not listened to my own fear that was saying, what if people don't like it? What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not writing the right things? What if I never hit the USA Today bestseller list? What if, all these fears that were talking to me, if I hadn't listened to that, I would have written a book that was similar to my my voice in the first one and that would have been true to myself. And who knows what might have happened with that series. It would have continued to grow, I'm sure, because the next books are all true to that voice, but just people in a series, they don't get past book 2. And I see it over and over and over again. Even now when I look at my numbers, there's a lot of people that just give up midway through book 2. Another thing that I want to encourage you as you get into this career and you think about publishing, you think about your writing, is don't let fear or the voices of people around you talk you out of doing the things that are most important to you, or talk you into compromising who you are or the books you want to write. Right now, there is a market for just about every kind of book. And yes, there is a way to market yourself. There are ways to put yourself out there. You can't necessarily just write like 10 different genres and put, homemade cover on all of them and just slap them all out there, 5 years apart and hope to have this amazing career. You might still land somewhere lucky with a lottery ticket type win with one of those books, but there are strategies that you can follow to make yourself more likely to have success. So I'm not saying that there aren't strategies, because there absolutely are some proven strategies. But what I'm saying is, if you compromise who you are along the way, you're probably going to regret it at some point. I even have some friends who did that, who compromised what they really wanted to write, and then they did find success. But you know what? They're not happy. I have one friend in particular, and of course I'm not going to say her name. She's not happy with what she's writing, but she's having great success with it. But she's miserable inside. She hates writing it. She kind of wants to quit, but she's terrified that if she goes in and writes the kind of thing she really wants to write, that it's not going to sell, because she found success in this one niche that she just never really wanted to write. But other people convinced her to write it. So it's like, how much does that success and that money really mean long term? It's exciting for a little while. It's awesome. You've got, a nicer house, or you've got all these things, but like, how long does that sustain you just by having success if it's not what you really want to write and it doesn't feed your soul? So, you have to weigh those types of consequences. Like, as much as you want success, do you want it so badly that you're willing to be miserable to get it, or that you're willing to compromise who you are or what you want to write in order to get it? And for some people, the answer is yes, for a certain amount of time. And then 10 years down the road, they regret it. And I've seen it happen over and over again. So just what I'm getting at is, don't let fear be your guide. Decide what you want your life and your career to look like. How much social media do you want to be on? What types of books do you want to write? What are you willing to do in terms of marketing? How much money and time do you want to spend managing that data? Really sit down and think about what you want that career to look like, and tune out those voices that say, you can't write YA, you can't make any money. Oh, this genre is dead. This genre is too overflowing with people. It's too crowded. Oh, you've got to spend money on this. This is the trend. Just like turn off those voices, put in some earplugs, turn off all those voices, and sit down and really think about, what is it that you want? In an ideal world, if somebody said you can write whatever you want and be successful, what would you be writing? How would your career look to you? What kinds of things would you be doing? How many books a year would you be writing? So really think about that. And then when you come out of that like dream world that you were in, that you were thinking about all of these things, start figuring out how you can make that dream of yours a reality. Because I promise you that if you put enough time and thought into it and you learn the strategies, you can pretty much take any dream, any genre, any type of life that you want, and you can make it a reality in this business. You just have to know what it is you want, and you have to have the courage to go after it. And the minute you start to let fear be your guide, or the voices of other people who are telling you you're doing it wrong be your guide, that's when you start to go down the wrong path. I have never let fear help me make a decision and not regretted it. Every single time I let fear take control, I regret the choices that I made, just like with that book. And in the end, choosing the more trendy type of style did not help me, because it wasn't true to who I was as a writer, and the readers understood that. They read it and it didn't resonate with them. It didn't feel right. And so I know for me, I have to write the things that I love to write in order to be successful. Another thing that I would love to say to you is, enjoy the journey. I know that we all get really impatient to get to this next level of like, oh, if I could only be making enough money to quit my job, I would be happy. But then I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to make enough money someday to quit your job. And then you're going to be home all day by yourself writing. And you're going to notice that, you're still writing in the living room with your like cheap Walmart furniture or whatever it is. And you're going to think, gosh, I'm miserable here in this tiny apartment. If I could just make enough money to buy a house in the suburbs or whatever, then I would be really happy. Or that swanky apartment downtown, then I would be happy. So then you're going to work really hard and maybe even do things that you don't want just to make that money faster so you can have that house. And you're going to move on to that next house. And there's going to be something wrong with that too. You're going to think, if I could just have that nicer car, or if I could just get a better laptop, or if I could just hit the USA Today, I would be happy, or if I could just see my book in a bookstore. And there's always going to be that next thing. And if you do that, you're constantly like kicking the can down the road, waiting for that next goal to make you happy. Then you're going to wake up one day, 90 years old, thinking, gosh, I never found happiness. And I wasted so much time trying to get to that next thing. Now, I am definitely someone who is a huge proponent of, creating big goals for ourselves. I always have a big goal. Like one of my biggest goals is to someday be able to afford a house on the marsh with a pool and a deep water dock. I want that life. But I am enjoying my life right here, right now at the same time. And I think that that's really the trick to happiness, no matter what career you're in, is like knowing what you want, having a very clear vision of what you're trying to create in your life, but also enjoying where you are right now. I loved the writing process at the very beginning. Absolutely loved it. And I was so happy to be a writer. My husband, George, and I lived in this tiny little townhouse that was, carpet that had been there for, 20 years, air conditioner that would give out and break, kitchen that had, the worst laminate countertops or whatever, like stains on the floor. It was just not the most beautiful house, but I was so excited to be writing. And I loved that experience. And I was so happy to be in a career that I loved and writing these great books. But what started to happen was I started to get impatient for the next step. Like I wanted to be someone that people looked up to as like, wow, she's just really selling a lot of books. And my motivations were really in the wrong place. Like I wanted to impress other people. I wanted to, hit this next goal faster. And I started to focus more on like the business side of things and how can I be better? And if I could just afford this bigger house, or if I could just afford for my husband to quit his job. And, I had all of these outer goals, and suddenly I stopped enjoying the writing process. And I do have a story about this that I want to tell you guys when I have more time. That's my dragonfly story, which I will share with you soon. But basically, I got myself so like focused on the future and what I was trying to build that I was willing to compromise myself, like with that story, the moment we began. And I got so frantic. I started all these different series, like reaching for that next big thing instead of really focusing in on the strategy that I wanted to do. So it's kind of like that fear and that, impatience for hitting the next goals really stole the joy of the journey from me. And I woke up several years later, actually, and realized I don't even like what I'm doing anymore, because it's not about the joy of the writing as much. Like when I would get really into the books, I would love it, love it, love it. But I was stressed out all the time about all the things I had to do and whether I was reaching these goals or not. And I couldn't even enjoy like, oh, sell 10,000 books in a month. And I wasn't even happy with that. I was like, it's not enough, and I was so hard on myself that I had totally forgotten to enjoy the journey. And you know what? My husband did quit his job and he still doesn't work. I'm solely in charge of the finances for this family, which is a huge accomplishment. But back then, instead of enjoying that and celebrating that and being happy with where I had, what I had accomplished, I was stressed about what's the next thing and am I going to be able to keep this up and what do I need to do? And it's strategy, strategy, strategy. And I got the big house and I got, the dream life, so to speak. And I wasn't happy at all. And when I had to take a step back and say, why is this stuff that I worked so hard for not making me happy? I started to realize that it's because I was constantly stressed out about what am I going to do to get to the next level? And instead of just sitting back and thinking, I love to write. I love hanging out with my fans. I appreciate them so much. Let's just enjoy this journey. Let's enjoy life as it is now while still working for those big goals, but let's have fun here. That's when everything changed for me. My husband and I moved with our son Andrew here to Charleston to live near the beach, and we just decided let's make our lives look and feel the way we want them to. And I dropped a lot of things that were not making me happy. I dropped a lot of Facebook groups that were trying to tell me about, oh, you've got to do it this way. Everybody should join Kindle Unlimited. You should be writing faster. You've got to stop writing YA. I stopped listening to all those people. And you know what happened? My income didn't go down and I was happy. And that is something that I really want for you guys as well, is to just stop and enjoy the journey. You may not be where you want to be yet. Maybe you want a big trad pub deal. Maybe you want a movie deal someday. Maybe you want a bigger house. Maybe you want to quit your job. And those are all great things to start looking forward to. But when you're looking forward to those things and you're reaching for those goals, don't forget to enjoy today. Don't forget to enjoy the fact that you get to sit down and create worlds out of your brain that other people are going to read. Don't forget that you love this process, that there are books you love to read, that there are reasons why you wanted to write. Don't forget that you have this incredible opportunity to change your life and to transform your life, to quit your job, to do all of these things. And that stuff will come to you with time if you follow your heart and you really start to learn about the business, learn more about the craft. But enjoy the journey as you're going through it, because otherwise you're going to wake up 10 years from now and you're going to have all those things you wanted and you're going to realize that you are miserable and it's just not worth it. I want to get to that house on the marsh someday and be deliriously happy the whole way through. And of course, there are challenges. I'm suffering right now from a lot of postpartum anxiety. And, I've talked about that some in my Facebook or my stories and stuff. But, it doesn't mean that every moment is happy or that we don't struggle. But it just means try to enjoy that journey. Try to be true to yourself as you're moving through or moving toward those goals. Don't let fear be your master. Don't let fear be your guide. Instead, let your own intuition, your own joy, and that ideal life that you set for yourself, let that be your guide. And just have confidence in yourself that you're going to be able to create that life that you want so badly. Because I truly believe after 9 years of self-publishing, I have made more than $1 million doing this. I have sold almost 750,000 books. And what I have learned is that the biggest moments of success for me have not come from trying to game the system or trying to cut corners or trying to take out, thousands of dollars of Facebook ads. I know that stuff works for other people, but I've been true to myself and my own intuition. And the biggest successes for me have come when I've been super excited about a story and I've just focused on the writing and I've focused on building up my community of fans. Those two things have made the biggest impact for me. And those two things are the most important to me: community and the joy of writing what I want. Those two things are absolutely the most important to me. And when I focus on those two things, I find the biggest success financially, spiritually, emotionally. It always comes down to that. So this is really more of hopefully what you will find as a pep talk, saying that if you want your career to be something, don't listen to the people that say, oh, well, you can't do that. You can't write YA and make money. You can't do this and make money. Oh, well, you have to take out all these ads, or you have to be all over social media, even though you don't enjoy it. Just stop listening to some of those people and start listening to yourself. What is it that you really want? Believe that you can achieve it, and then start learning the strategies of how I'm going to do this. Okay, if you don't want to be on social media or you only want to be on YouTube, then what's your best strategy? Start listening to the people that are successful on YouTube, or start watching the people that are successful that have no social media, and start figuring out what it is they do. If you want to write YA and everybody tells you that you can't make money writing YA, start looking to the authors who are doing it and are finding success in young adult. And if you can't find someone that is doing or has the life that you want, then just trust for yourself. Start writing it out and use yourself as your own inspiration. Because if it's something that you want, then you can absolutely have it. You might not make it overnight. You might not make it as fast as some of these people who are using ghostwriters, but I guarantee you that your success and your joy will last a heck of a lot longer than theirs will, because you're doing it in a way that's aligned with who you are and that's true to who you are. And you know, you're not going to burn out. You're not going to get tired of it. You're going to just have this joy as you go through that journey. And, you know, 9 years of self-publishing, that's really some of the biggest, most important things that I've learned. I hope that this means something to you. I hope that there are some of you out there that are listening to this now and feeling encouraged that you can make your career look and feel the way that you want it to. And also just stop feeling so rushed. You're not going to miss out on your dreams. You're not going to be so far behind that you never can self-publish or find a publisher, or that you'll never find the success that you want. Just trust the timing of your own life and your own dreams. Get to work. Start doing the things you need to do. But you don't have to cut corners, and you don't have to sacrifice who you are or who you want to be. You just have to enjoy the journey and follow your passions and take action that's true to who you are. And you're going to be okay. You're going to be a success. I first started self-publishing in 2010, and I had been writing for a few years before that. But when I took that leap and I decided to self-publish, it was not about fear. It was not about, you know, listening to what other people said, because trust me, so many people in my life at that time said, you're killing your whole career if you self-publish. Nobody self-publishes unless they just are terrible writers, blah, 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 blah. If I had listened to all those people or had listened to fear, I would not be sitting here where I am in my beautiful house in Charleston with my husband who stays home with me all day, and my beautiful baby girl upstairs, and my son at a, you know, wonderful private school. We wouldn't have this life that we love, and I wouldn't be making 6 figures a year writing the books that I love or have thousands of fans. None of that would exist because I would have listened to people who were trying to make me scared, and I would have listened to my own fear and doubt. Instead, that was like one moment in my life that I decided to follow the excitement and the joy. I followed the excitement of, I'm going to write this book that I think sounds really cool, and I'm going to get it out there, and it's going to be really fun. And I wrote it, and I loved it, and I had fun doing it, and I put it out there, and the rest is history. You know, that was Beautiful Demons 9 years ago, and now I've sold over 500,000 copies of the books in that series and that world. And I'll be working soon on book 11 of that series. I've been writing it for nearly a decade. And you know, that is what it's about, following your joy and following your passion instead of following your fear. And I hope that somehow this has resonated with you. I know it's been a little bit rambly, but I just decided that for 9-year celebration, I was just gonna talk from my heart about what I think is most important, and hopefully encourage you that you can make this career however you want. Just follow your intuition, follow your joy, follow your excitement, and you're gonna be okay. All right, guys, that's all I have for you. If you are new to this channel, go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you here in our little community for heart breathing. So like this video, and I'd love to have you comment down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.